Thank you, Mike. Just excited to be here, everyone. Have some quick thank yous to run through real quick and then jump into your questions. I don't want to sit up here and bore you too much. I know you probably got a lot to throw at me, but first of all, I want to thank my wife and daughter. They're here. They came with me today. My wife, Lindsay, my daughter, Lillian. Really excited to move out here and start our new chapter of our life here in Norman. I want to thank the search committee that brought me here to Norman. Randall Stevenson, Joe Castiglione, President Haraz, and Jake Rosenberg. Thank all those guys. Excited to be here with Coach Venables and the staff. I know a bunch of these guys from over the years in scouting when I was in the NFL and then my time at the Senior Bowl. So excited to get to work. Excited to get out here and help them find good players to build this thing up and build championship football teams. So open it up. Ready to go. Hey, Ryan.
Nice to meet you. I know that you talked about the OU brand and that being a draw for this position, but I'm curious, outside of just that, why did this make sense for you, given your background, moving into college football as compared to what you were doing at the Senior Bowl or what you had done?
Well, I told Mike I was going to mention this. The OU brand goes way back. So my first poster as a kid was Billy Sims, and my first jersey was Billy Sims. I was a huge Detroit Lions fan, so it wasn't an OU jersey, but it was a Billy Sims jersey. But no, an incredible challenge. You know, I mean, this is growing up as a kid wanting to get into scouting. I was so focused on the National Football League, and now these jobs are evolving in college football. And it's just a great opportunity, great place. Wanted to go somewhere where I could win championships. We could win championships, and this is certainly that place. So, just ready for that next challenge. I mean, this is a really cool opportunity. I think a lot of schools right now are saying they're going to a new model, and maybe not really fully embracing a new model. And that's what I felt when I was here on the interview. I really felt that from the leadership here that they were ready to embrace this. And I'm just excited to get to work with Coach Venables. I mean, it's going to be a great partnership. He's a great coach. Just over the years, seen him at Clemson. I don't go way back to when he was here at Oklahoma the first time. I wasn't in this part of the country, but watching him do his thing and teach guys on the field and motivate those guys at Clemson was great. And I just want to come in and help him find really good players.
Stay on the right side, George Stoya, Sooners Group.
Yeah, Jim,
Hey, George.
can you give us a little bit of a structure breakdown of how this is going to look in terms of you and Greg collaborating, as well as what does this front office look like? Like, how many people does it look like to staff something like this?
Yeah, we're working through the staffing right now. The number thing, yes, we need to have a more robust staff. There's some good people in place who I met, and I've known Drew Hill forever. I think we go back 20-some years. He was the pro liaison at Fresno State when I was scouting on the West Coast as a young guy. So good people in place, but yeah, we're certainly going to be making a lot of hires. And the school's committed to that, and that's great. I mean, that's what it's going to take. So, in terms of the structure, we're working through like org chart stuff. I'm not going to get into details there, but we're going to bring in good people. Want to bring in some people with NFL experience. It's not just going to be me on the NFL from the NFL. We're going more of a pro model, so it's going to be important to bring some more people on that end. And also, I've got some blind spots too. Having never worked in college, and I'm aware of that. So, bringing in some more people that have experience at the college level and really lean on Drew. Joe Lee, people that are on the staff already.
To follow up on that,
Yeah.
why is that important to have NFL people in today's college football?
Just experienced eyes. I think forever college football has been populated by a lot of younger evaluators. I want to bring in proven guys that have seen NFL quality players. That's what we're looking to add. So bringing those guys down from the NFL will be important, especially in the portal, because that's where they've been really focused. And so then we have to beef up the department with more guys that have been on the college side too. So it's two, and then we're all going to cross train. It's going to be really important. We're not going to stay like siloed. So, coming from the NFL's done a really good job, like the last decade probably, of cross training all their scouts. And we're going to do that here. We're not just going to live in college. We're not just going to live in high school. Everyone's going to be involved in everything, really collaborative. Yep.
On the aisle, Eric Bailey, Tulsa.
Thanks, Eric.
I wanted to ask you kind of a two-part question, kind of different topics a little bit too. What's your earliest and just some of your memories of working with the University of Oklahoma through scouting and also with the Senior Bowl? And the second question is, what do you think it'll be like dealing with agents of high school athletes, agents that probably aren't familiar with the process when you have so much experience
So earliest memories of Oklahoma, I mean, just going back to a kid with Coach Switzer's teams. I'm going to go over and get together with him on Friday, which I'm really excited about. The guy's a legend, obviously. Just watching the wishbone and those teams. I mean, that was, and then scouting. I'm trying to think of my first years in here, probably like '09 through 13 when I was in Kansas City is when I was coming through Norman the most. And then in the Senior Bowl, we've had a bunch of OU guys. I just saw Bill Beedenbow upstairs, and I told him now it's my job to help him find some more guys like that. But he's a great one. And then what was the second part of the question?
Just going into high school players and working with those.
Sure. Yeah, I mean that's something I'm bringing to the table is agent relationships, and we're seeing more of the. It's funny, like over the last couple of years, the people I'm dealing with for the Senior Bowl that I've been dealing with for the Senior Bowl, are established firms and NFL certified contract guys, and they were really reluctant to kind of dip their toe into the NIL waters, and then they realized they kind of had to. So over the last couple of years, they're really throwing themselves into it. So it's great that I'm going to have a lot of existing relationships with some of the bigger outfits that represent NFL players. But yeah, I'm looking for that challenge. I mean, again, it's all relationships. So we're going to be open, and that's kind of how. In my background at the Senior Bowl, I knew right away when I took the Senior Bowl job. Some of my friends in the agent community shared with me, like, we almost control too much of the process right now for your game. So I thought, you know what, like, we need to start watching tape. We never had tape in the office at the Senior Bowl before I got there, so that's something we did for right off the bat. But we need to watch the tape. We need to help these guys. These agents have a difficult job, just like it's gotten so expensive to recruit players and then train players, get them ready for the combine and in the draft. So it was really a really cool, like, give and take relationship. I helped them throughout the year, and then when it came time to get those guys in Mobile for the game, for the most part, they reciprocated. So it's just working at those relationships, and I'm looking forward to it. My phone's been blowing up since the announcement. I don't know how they all got my number, but a lot of the existing guys already had it. Yeah, hearing from some people I haven't heard from before, and looking forward to making those relationships.
I'm Eric. We're going to John Hoover, SI Sooners.
Yeah, it's interesting that if you look at, you mentioned the model, but the model of college football is going to.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at some of Oklahoma's peer schools, they come from all different, the GMs come from all different kinds of backgrounds, scouting, coaching, guys that have been in marketing, all kinds of different backgrounds. I wanted to ask you, what is your background, specifically with the Senior Bowl and scouting?
I mean, I would think I think the unique part of my background, and we talked about it at length during the interview process, is the relationship piece. Just because you're dealing with the NFL world, and we incorporated the NFL in everything we did at the Senior Bowl. And again, being in the league almost 20 years, I had a lot of existing relationships, but made so many more, and then with the NFL league office, which probably won't play much of a role in this job, but then the agent community in college football. With coaches at the coaching level, the personnel people. There's a big personnel symposium every year in Nashville. I've been going to that for years. I've been speaking at that and trying to make those connections. And so really it's the relationship piece. And then, from where my background is, it's a scouting background. I mean, I like nothing more than sitting in a dark room and watching tape. That's what I've done my whole life. So I've got a lot of work to do. I mean, every day I'm like, okay, what's the next thing? I'm trying to think of the next thing, but I can't wait to get to the point. And it's I know we got a lot to get done, but where we can just really start, I can start digging in. And first of all, learning this roster. I owe that to I owe that to all these players, to know them inside and out as football players, because you can't build a roster unless you know your own. So I'm going to learn these guys, and we're going to go out and we're looking for players to improve the roster, and it's going to be really competitive. Being in the state of Alabama up close for the last 18 years, we've been entrenched there in the state of Alabama. So it's, I've seen I've been in that building in Tuscaloosa quite a bit. And I think what Coach Saban he gets credit for all the winning that he did there, but it was the competitive environment that he built on that roster. And when I was in the NFL, like, we talked about that in draft meetings all the time, like what these guys do in practice every day. They're going up against, it's NFL dude against NFL dude. That's what we need to build here. But you can't do that unless you know your own roster. So again, I bring the scouting background. Love to evaluate, love to find players. That's my passion. And but what I'm bringing to the table more than anything is the relationships, because those are critical.
Also, a quick follow-up, if you don't mind. The NCAA component, compliance component, is a moving target for schools right now and for associations, for big conferences. Not knowing what some of those parameters are you a little nervous about stepping into that arena?
Not nervous. I know I got work to do. I know there's a lot of things I need to brush up on and get caught up to speed on. But that's right there. You never go into a job having everything figured out. So I'll definitely need help on that front, and I'll work at that. Yep.
John Colton Sully, the Oklahomas.
Hey, Colton.
You mentioned it a little bit there about the achievement on the roster. Just curious if you have any early impressions evaluating the roster and then also spring portal is a month away. Just curious if you have any goals.
Well, the biggest goal right now is making some hires and getting some people here in Norman that can help out. In terms of the roster, I mean, nothing too big picture to share. I mean, it was fun watching material a little bit before I came on the interview. Want to get a look at him, but no, too early for that. Again, I got a lot of work to do there too. But I think the first goal is just to get some guys here to help lift this thing.
Come over to the left side. Jesse Crittenden, are you inside?
Yeah, hey, Jim.
Hey, Jesse.
Hey, just want you talked about it a little bit, but Brent kind of mentioned that one of the values of the general manager is he can really focus on really being a head coach for your group.
Sure.
The title has gotten so big over the last couple of years. Just how important is that for you? Maybe just to even take more and more off his plate. And also,
Absolutely. No, absolutely. When I came in on the interview, that's the one thing I wanted to do is just assure the coaches that I'm here to help. I mean, this is going to be a really fun collaboration. I saw it firsthand in the NFL. Like, Brent and I's relationship is going to be critical, and he and I both know that. We have to be really intentional with our communication, and I think the best example I was ever around was John Schneider and Pete Carroll in Seattle, and they had a really awesome 14-year run together. So I've seen it. I've seen what it should look like. So no, I'm excited about that. But again, I'm here to help. I'm here to help them find players, take some stuff off their plate. I mean, Brent doesn't need to be negotiating all these contracts. I don't think that's a coach's place at all. And then for coaching forever, it's been evaluate, right? It's been recruit, and then it's been develop and coach. And now there's this retainment piece. And I think that if schools aren't looking at that and saying, well, how can we create more time for our coaches to work on the retainment piece and build culture and develop a place where players want to stay? Because the worst thing that can happen is we bring in good players and lose good players. I mean, that's whether it's in college, the NFL. I mean, if you draft a good player in the NFL and you develop him and he gets to his free agent deal and you lose him, like that's worst case scenario. So to me, the scouting staff we bring in. I mean, we're going to really take a heavy lift off the evaluation side. We're still going to include the coaches. There's no doubt. I learned early on my first job in the NFL, interning in Green Bay. I had an opportunity to drive Ron Wolf, the GM, to the airport as an intern from Green Bay to Milwaukee. So it's quite a thrill for me as a 22-year-old kid. But I'll never forget. He was telling me, he's like, Jim, never force a player down a coach's throat. Never do that because it won't work out. And I was part of some clubs where we did that a couple times, and it didn't work out. So people have asked, like, what's going to happen if you and Brent don't see the same? There's enough high school players and players in the portal that we're gonna find common ground on for sure. I'm not worried about that. But so the coaches are still going to be involved in the evaluation. I want to know which guys they want to coach. Through the recruiting process, when they get to know these guys as people better than we probably will on the scouting side. Okay, well that's where we're really going to come together and blend the talent and the makeup of the player to bring the right guys, because it's not always finding like the most talented guys. It's finding the best fit for OU, especially now in this age. In this era where guys can just get up and go, we want guys that want to be here. And the cool part of being outside of college football, like I have been, I've had a lot of people on the inside share stories with me and on the pitfalls and what they don't like about it, whether that's coaches or administrators. So I've taken a lot of notes over the years on if I got an opportunity like this, things we maybe would do different. And I think one of the things is just taking some of the load off the coaches, because I can't tell you how many coaches over the last 3 or 4 years have called and said, Jim, if you hear anything in the NFL, keep me in mind, let me know. Like, I'm really looking to bounce. And, the follow-up question is always like, why? Why do you want to leave? You're at a great school. You're at a great program. So there's obviously something going on within college football when coaches want to leave good jobs. So again, I credit the leadership here at OU that they saw that too. I'm not saying that's the only reason why I'm sitting here, but to take some of that load off these coaches, I think is important.
Stay here, Tom Green with Sooners Illustrated.
Hey, Tom. Yeah.
Can you
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I've been fortunate to work in some really good places. But again, when you work in the NFL, it's a really small fraternity. Everybody talks. You kind of hear where other places are, and I mean, believe it or not, I think it's getting better than it was 20 years ago, 25 years ago when I got in the league. But there were some buildings where there's a clear division between scouting and coaching. And that's never going to work. And that was John's mantra and Pete's mantra in Seattle was no walls. So and that included the business side as well. We'd have a cafeteria and everyone would be down there, and it was just felt like one big family. So certainly on the football side, the guys that we bring in are going to be excited to work with this coaching staff because it's going to be a blend. I mean, we're going to do the bulk of the eval work is kind of how I see it. And they're still going to do, the bulk of the recruiting. Now, I think I want to play a role when we get guys on campus. I think there's some value there. I think, some of the guys I'm looking to bring in will have value in this building, just with their NFL backgrounds of the players. But this has to be, and that's the fun of it. Like with the Senior Bowl job, it would have been easy for me to just sit in an office in Mobile and watch tape and pick players, but that would not have appealed to me at all. And that's why we built out a personnel department. I had all these retired NFL scouts, and not always retired, but guys that were, between jobs. And it was just great. Like I kind of thrive in a collaborative format. So that's what we're going to do. This is going to be where everyone that comes to the building it's not going to be Brent's guy. It's not going to be my guy. It's going to be an Oklahoma guy, and the staff's guy. So that's just what I believe because I've seen it work. I think it's the only way. Hey.
Just curious, and this may be too kind of broad of a question, but do you kind of have an idea of your short list of like, okay, this is what I look for in a player and also in building my team? Like, is it traits, or is it guys that maybe do a little bit more with less talent? Can you kind of maybe give us the short of like what you're wanting to build with?
That is a broad question, but I like it. I'm not going to get too specific. I don't want to. I was very open in my Senior Bowl role, especially on social media with some things. I'm really going to close that up a little bit now. But no, I would say, coming from Seattle, and I was part of a couple different models. Patriots and Seattle were two very different buildings, two very different cultures that I was a part of. But when it comes down to what we look for in football players, I mean, this is going to be a traits-driven roster. I mean, to boil it down in its simplest form, when you walk out on a football field on a college football Saturday, and what you'll see the NFL scouts down there with their notebooks, and what they're doing is they're body typing players. There's something to be said. The team that usually looks the part and looks better on the hoof is the better football team. So if we're just trying to get it down to its most simplistic form, so we're going to be a traits-driven team, but they have to be good football players. So people say, what do you look for at this position, that position? To me, you have to be instinctive at every position. If you're not an instinctive football player, you better have rare speed or some rare physical trait to overcome, maybe a lack of instincts. Like for a linebacker, if a guy's not really instinctive, doesn't see it quickly, well, he better be able to roll. He better be able to make up for that with foot speed. So we are going to be a traits-driven organization for sure. And then again, I really lean heavily into the makeup of a player. I think watching the tape is the easiest part, especially if you've done this as long as I've done it. The hardest part is figuring out the person. And it's probably a little easier at the college level than at the pro level because you get to spend a lot more time with them through recruiting here in college than the NFL guys do. Literally, they've got like 3 months to figure these guys out right now. So that's what I would say. I mean, we just need to find the right guys. You guys that love football, guys that are highly competitive, guys that want to be around the building. When I was a scout, I would come into buildings and, ask the secretaries, who's around here a lot? Do you see so-and-so around here? And if the answer was no, he's not really around here very much, well, that was a huge red flag for me. So we want guys that love football. And it's easy to say, like, you can't ask a player if he loves football. Of course he's going to say yes. So we got to figure out ways through recruiting like we had to in the NFL. Like, how are we getting to that answer? How are we really going to figure out which guys love it? So sorry, I ramble a little bit, but that's not to drill down on every position, but yeah, traits and instincts and makeup.
Third row, middle, Kerry Murdoch, Sarah.
Jim, if you want to call them like the rules of acquisition, just how college players end up on campus now, no ceiling on what you can pay, to build your roster. Everybody expects some more guardrails to be placed on it. But how do you operate now until you know the certainty of, what those guardrails are, what, revenue sharing would be, what, NIL rules are? Like, do you operate just the same as you will when all this stuff gets figured out, or do you have to operate differently?
No, I think, yeah, that's a great question. I think you need to operate differently. So really the biggest thing right now in college football, in my opinion, is it's not just the we need to nail the evaluation. And we also have to nail the valuation of the player. And that's where Brent and I need to sit and spend a lot of time with the staff. And really this is his football team. So this is going to be a vision of his football team. I need to know which players in his system are really valuable, because we can't spend money everywhere. So we are gonna value certain positions on this football team more than others. I've got my own ideas of what those are, but certainly, Brent and I are going to get together, and that's where we're going to spend. And then again, if you have good players, if you have impact players, you need to take care of impact players. You can't let those guys walk. So we're going to have pillar type players that we don't want to lose, and regardless of position, if we're doing a value chart of the roster, position by position, and it's a position lower, but we've got a great player, we've got a top 100 NFL draft pick or a top 50 NFL draft pick, like we're going to figure out a way to keep that guy here.
Okay, third row left side, Eli Letterman, ESPN.
Jim, as far as like the needs of a modern college front office, how do they differ in your view from the previous personnel setups across college?
One is manpower. Just strictly, you look at all the numbers of players going into the portal. That just wasn't doable. I think you're seeing a lot of staffs having to beef up just from a sheer work volume standpoint. So, and then when you talk about working under constraints of a form of a cap, right? That's completely different than in the past. And again, just the player retention, we're just in a different place. It's a totally different landscape. So again, the coach-driven model, which how it's always been. I just think that's a thing of the past, because from a sheer, we talked about it earlier, which is the workload management for a coaching staff. It's impossible to do the job right now. So I think the schools that are getting out in front of this, like we are here, are going to be ahead of it, and we're going to stay nimble. This thing's, to your point, this thing's going to change. We don't know if that's 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. This thing's going to continue to morph. We need to continue to stay nimble, and that's why we need to have really talented people in this building. And again, that are cross-trained in a lot of different areas, so we can adapt. You got to be really open-minded. Again, on a totally different level. I've had to adapt a lot the last few years of the Senior Bowl, because just the landscape of that has changed in my 7 years. And we went from, I'd bring 10 DBs on each team. This year, we brought 8 corners on one team, and none of them made the game day roster. We started the week with 8 corners on one team. We got to the game with none. We had to flip 2 guys on game day. So this whole you got to be on your toes. You got to be able to adjust, and I think I do a pretty good job of that. So.
Next, Eli, we'll go to Curtis Fitzpatrick with Sports Animal.
Hey, Jim.
Hey, Curtis.
How you doing?
Good.
Recruiting and finding players comes in a lot of forms right now. For you at the Senior Bowl, you've had to find guys at all levels of Division I football and other divisions. How much of your operation will be focused on finding under-the-radar college guys that might be looking to transfer?
Yeah, a good bit. We're gonna advance scout all our opponents, which a lot of people at the college level haven't done before. So we're gonna have a really good handle on our own conference, that's for sure. We're definitely gonna know our footprint. We're gonna know guys from this area, the state of Texas, that might end up somewhere and want to look for a change here in a couple of years. And you look at every year at the Senior Bowl, we would have, a dozen to 15 small school FCS or lower players on the roster. And if they're good enough to, be NFL draft picks, they're good enough to play in the SEC and compete at a high level in the SEC. So they're out there. They're certainly out there. I just read an article the other day of the small school numbers are really down. And we felt it in the last couple of years. I felt it, but then to see the actual numbers, what those are, but they are still out there. There's good players in small school football. Group of 5, there's some great players in Group of 5. So we're going to look at all of it.
Front row, James Hale.
Hey, James.
Rick spent some time when he was talking about how he thought you were going to help him just become a football coaching things that he likes to do. Talk about how you feel like, from your standpoint, in today's environment that you're ready to get into, that you can do that to help him do that. What do you do in today's environment that will allow him to do that?
Just take all that load off his plate. Like I said, I mean, the eval part, the heavy eval part. I mean, I think what most coaches, and I don't want to speak for the guys here, but a lot of complaints I've heard is that they spend too much time looking at players that can't help their football team. So what our staff, what we need to do is bring them the right guys, right? Like, we have to filter it down. By the time we get to the coaches, and especially Coach Venables, he's looking at the guys he really needs to look at. We don't need to bog these guys down on players that don't belong on an SEC football field. So that's probably the biggest thing. But I'm excited to get going with them. I love to learn. Like I said, I've got a lot to learn when it comes to some of this college stuff. I'm going in wide open, eyes wide open on this stuff. It's funny. When the hire was announced, I got a lot of calls and texts from guys at the college level, and they said, welcome to the something show. I'll leave it at that. I'll edit it. And I really don't look at it that way. I think it's a really cool opportunity. And again, I've heard a lot of people complain about it. But there's there's an old saying, there's a book called "The Obstacle Is the Way," and I think we got to embrace it. It is what it is, and I think the schools and the programs that are ready to adapt and attack it are going to be the most successful. So that's where I'm looking at it. It's funny, I had a number of those texts like "Welcome to the mess," and I'm like, I just don't see it that way. So I don't know, maybe I'm naive, but I'm excited for it.
Time for a few more quick ones. Front row right, Barry Trammell, Tulsa World.
Hey, Barry.
Jim, the negotiation part of this, when you have to talk money with high school kid or a football kid, doesn't matter. How different is that going to be from any experience that people have had in the NFL negotiation?
Well, I think anytime you bring a family dynamic in, it's probably more sensitive, right? Like, I can't think of too many examples in the NFL that have been like that. Lamar Jackson comes to mind. I remember flying to the combine that year, and Lamar and his mom were sitting behind me, and it was just you never see a player traveling with their family to the combine. But yeah, it's certainly, I mean, because I can use myself as an example. I had a son that played high school football, and I had dad goggles for sure. I thought he was a good player. I loved watching him play. But did I think he was probably a little better than he was? Probably. So dealing with families, you're just going to be a little more sensitive. There's no doubt about it. There's going to be a challenge there. But I think what I've learned over the last 7 years, just dealing with the agent community, if you're just straightforward with people and you're straight up, that's the best policy. They're not always going to love what you want to hear, but if you're coming from a place of, I'll say this to cut myself off. Like, I think the agents didn't always agree with me when they were calling me about their players, trying to get them in the Senior Bowl or things of that nature. But I think they always appreciated that I put in the work. They didn't always agree, but I think they respected it. And the same thing's going to apply here. Like, we're gonna be really open. And this goes back to my time in the NFL. I worked with a former NFL player, a great former NFL player. One of the teams I was with, they brought scouts in to help cut players for a cut down. And it was the first time ever doing it. And I asked him his advice on it as a guy that played in the league at a high level. And he was like, "Man, you just can't BS players." He's like, "Just tell them why we're cutting them, exactly why we're cutting them. They need to know that. They deserve to know that." So these are just going to be really transparent, truthful conversations. And it's always going to be, for us, if they're in this building, it's always going to come from a place of care. If they're in this building, we're going to try to get them to wherever they want to get to. And I think most of these guys coming into this building would want to play in the NFL someday. I think that would be a goal for most of these guys. It should be if you're an SEC level recruit. But who knows, along their path, maybe that changes. But we'll always be truthful with our players and with the families as well. I'm certainly going to be sensitive to that because they're not used to negotiating either, right? I mean, there's going to be emotion involved because that's not something most family members have ever done, is negotiate a contract on behalf of a loved one. I mean, just saying it out loud, I mean, I think everyone in the room can feel like, yeah, that's probably going to be pretty difficult, pretty awkward. But I think if people know that you're coming from a good place and you care about them, I think that's the best place to come from.
Last one, far right, Ryan Chapman, SI Sooners.
Hey, Ryan.
Look at the pro model of talent acquisition, draft free agency versus recruiting, transfer portal. What aspects do you think are going to be the easiest, lift these processes and streamline versus
Could you rephrase it?
Yeah, well,
Like, what's the easiest? I'm not.
yeah, your processes of draft for agency, being able to put an NFL roster. What's going to be the most similar to just translating that to going after guys in the portal or evaluating recruits versus what's going to take the most tweaking to move off the NFL to adjust to how you have to work out football?
Sure. No, I mean, I think the easiest thing will be the portal because it's apples to apples, right? Not in every case. I mean, if you're evaluating a FCS level player, Division II player, it's not SEC, but it's still college to college. So I think anytime you're evaluating a college player compared to a high school player, there's less projection. So to me, that's easier. Is that answering it? Yeah. I mean, and that's why we're going to attack the portal. I mean, there's good players, and there's a lot of examples. There's a handful of schools out there the last couple of years that have done great work in the portal. And people have asked me, like, what's that breakdown going to be? I can't answer that because it's just like that. Every draft has different strengths, and there's certain draft. Like, this is a pretty strong draft. It's not great, up top in the draft, but there's some really good depth to this year's draft just because of the extra COVID year and everything. So this is a deep draft. There's going to be every year in the portal is going to be different, in my opinion. So we got to get in there and we're going to have the players evaluated. We're not going to react. We're not going to be reactionary. We're going to, there's certainly going to be players that take us off guard, and that's going to happen. But we're going to try to get that thing scouted as best we possibly can, so we're not reactive. So we got our ducks in a row when these guys jump in, and we can jump on them. But again, it's going to be different. So someone asked me recently, like, what break it down? Like, what's the percentage? I can't say that because I think every year is going to be different.